What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB, and more specifically, an episode of Let's Talk Dynasty. Now, as promised, we've waited for all of these new NFL coaches to get hired by their new teams. We wanted to give you guys a coaching changes episode here today, so we're going to be going through all 7 of these hires, who they're bringing along with them to these new teams, some of the takeaways from those opening press conferences, and how we think that is going to affect some of these Dynasty fantasy football options. So, without wasting too much time, it wouldn't be an episode of Let's Talk Dynasty without my co-host. So let's get MFGDs into the building and let's start talking some coaches. War, how we doing today?
We doing good, man. Let's roll. Let's get this show on the road, baby.
Yeah, I mean, look, apologize. I was a little late. I'm diving deep into coaching trees and shit like that. And then I realized I shouldn't be doing all that. But hey, that's what the people are here for. I don't want to waste a bunch of time because there's a lot to talk about today. I'm going to give you the honor because your Chicago Bears, for the people at home, they should know by now, if you've watched the show, your Chicago Bears ended up making a head coaching hire this offseason. And not only did you make a head coaching hire, I think you came away with the popular girl. I think you got the belle of the ball. I think you got the cream of the crop, and you end up hiring Ben Johnson, formerly the offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions. Now, obviously, you sat down and watched that press conference. First of all, let me just ask you this, man. How are you feeling about the Ben Johnson hire, and what are you, kind of taking away from the early days of this Ben Johnson era in Chicago?
I'm okay. I'm all right.
Cut it out. I know you're ecstatic as hell.
Look. Was he my choice? Yes. Did I turn on him when I started to think he was going to the Raiders? Yes, I did. So as soon as that rumor came out, I was like, he's probably Josh McDaniels.
Oh,
but
man.
Now that he actually signed with the Bears, I'm like, okay, let's go. So I'm gonna have to go down a small rabbit hole, not a big one, just a small one. Small rabbit hole of Chicago Bears, because I'll give you the perspective of everybody who's going to see this episode. I'll tell you that I'm pretty sure most of you guys view the Bears as a poverty franchise. I'm pretty sure, but there's been a transformation behind it. And I understand they only won 4 games last season, but I think if you were honest with yourself and just not being a troll, you would say, okay, they're probably losing this game because the coach is an idiot and he's doing things like not calling timeouts when he should call timeouts and calling timeouts when he should not call timeouts. Like, the coach was just malpractice in the coaching sense. So behind the scenes, slowly, the Bears have hired a team president that was formerly with Andrew's team, the Minnesota Vikings, and he's slowly not been changing things on the surface of the Bears, but behind the scenes, getting the ownership to do things that they wouldn't typically do. Like, the Bears wouldn't typically draft the quarterback at the guy who was the consensus number 1 pick at the quarterback position. Old Bears would have found some dude from some small college and told you he's the next whatever and drafted him high like they did Mitchell Trubisky. Old Bears wouldn't have fired Shane Waldron midseason. Old Bears wouldn't have fired Matt Eberflus midseason because it's a part of their policy, and that leads me up to old Bears would have not paid a first-time head coach $13 million to coach their team. It's just not something the old Bears would do. So this is a new Chicago Bears. And I'll tell you that because insiders and other agents of teams have been saying that the Bears are different in terms of how they do business now. And that's mainly because of team president Kevin Warren. But back to Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson, his press conference, he wanted to stress accountability. That's the first thing that comes to mind for Bears fans this past season, because there was none of it. The coach wasn't accountable. He would screw up and then after the game said, I think we had a good plan. Players weren't accountable. They were on the sidelines talking shit to the fans while Hail Marys were going on, and then, being the ones that tipped the ball to cause a game, which killed their season. They were in a good spot until it happened. It killed their season. Literally only won one more game. Ben Johnson said that Caleb Williams, and this is obvious, this would have been obvious for any of the coaches site. Caleb Williams is going to be a big part of why he signed with the Bears, because obviously if he didn't care about what quarterback was going to quarterback the team, then he would have just went to the Raiders or something. Like, so that was a big deal for them. He also stated that the Bears offense will not be the Lions offense. He wants to tear the offense down to the studs all the way down. He doesn't want to do a repeat. So I know a popular idea has been, the Bears drafting Ashton Genty and then, having the two Sonic and Knuckles duo on Chicago. But that doesn't make sense because, first of all, Chicago no longer has David Montgomery. So, I mean, where are you going to get Knuckles from? You can have Sonic if you draft Genty, but I'm telling you now, Swift and Roshan Johnson are not David Montgomery. I mean, had we foreseen things happening, maybe they should have just kept David freaking Montgomery in the first place. But but it's not going to be the same offense. You might see similar concepts and things here and there, but unlike previous coordinators of the offense of the Bears, you're not going to get guys coming in, Pat Nagy. You're not going to get guys coming in like, hey, this is my plan, and this is what we're going to roll with. It doesn't matter if you guys don't necessarily fit into my plan. We're just going to roll with these plays because, I'm Matt Nagy. But so there he's going to cater the entire offense to the best players on the team. So he's going to do what's best for Caleb, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze. Keenan Allen won't be there, and I think that we're going to see a little rise in Cole Kmet. So I mean, those are three guys I would keep my eye out for fantasy purposes. I think the jury is already out. I don't know if that's a good term to use, but I think, Andrew, help me out here. I think DJ Moore, Caleb, and Rome Odunze, their stock is already going to be higher just because Ben Johnson got hired. But I think the sneaky guy that you want to look at for fantasy purposes is going to be Cole Kmet, because he's the one who you can get for cheap, who might see the biggest boost from the hiring of Ben Johnson. I'll close out. Oh, go ahead, Andrew.
No, you said you needed some help. I definitely agree with that statement of the Cole
Yeah.
Kmet being probably a little bit of a sneakier buy. So I will echo that statement, but I'll let you get your closing statement in here.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll close it out with any concerns about Ben Johnson not being able to lead a room. He was able to erase that from the minute he got hired. He stood in front of the entire staff of the Chicago Bears organization, and he told them to get back to work. And then during his press conference, if you've seen it, he owned the entire room. He looked like $1 million. He sounded like $1 million. So I know a lot of reports came out, especially from Raiders, beat writers, or whoever, trying to tear down Ben Johnson because they were salty, saying stuff like, oh, yeah, well, he's an introvert. And, we seen how it happened with Johnson. There's nothing he's demonstrated to me so far that he's an introvert. It just, he hasn't shown it. Like, he owned that room. Like, I don't even like watching press conferences, but Ben Johnson was out there. I felt, and I don't know if it's because I've listened to Matt Eberflus for so long, who's basically word salad extraordinaire. He just listening to someone who actually had a coherent explanation of what they're trying to do. It was just a breath of fresh air to have a coach who isn't afraid to tell it like it is. And I think that now the Bears have a guy who can actually put the best product on the field, and I'm hoping that he could do something that could make Bears fans stop being so pessimistic and actually enjoy football for once.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth noting too that the Detroit Lions, like, this is a team that is ranked in the top 5 in total offense for like the last 3 seasons, all 3 seasons that Ben Johnson has been the offensive coordinator there. This is a team that also was number 1 ranked offensively last year in 2024, so he's coming off of his best year total. One other takeaway really that I had from the press conference that you didn't touch on, maybe for a reason, is we did have the classic Chicago soundbite. You had the NFC North rivalry, the Matt LaFleur kind of thing, where it was like, I wanted to stay here so I could just keep beating Matt LaFleur. And that's the only other thing that I really had as like a takeaway. He knows there's a rivalry there. I think he was trying to get some people riled up and excited about it, but I don't know about you, War, but I think I would just like Chicago to bring in new people that don't instantly say some shit that could get clipped a year from now. Like, I would like them to just focus on business.
I mean, we're all like that though, right? Caleb's like that, Ben's like that, I'm like that. Like, we just throw our, I mean, it's going to be interesting, man. A quarterback with the mindset of Caleb, like which you said a couple times throughout the season that he's a little arrogant, things like that.
Yeah,
He's
I mean
made
he
some facial
confident in his head.
expressions that you weren't happy about. And then you got Ben Johnson. So I mean, it's going to be interesting. Two guys that like are supremely confident in what they can do. I want to see how that plays out. But yeah, the idea is that the Packers can clip it, but can't do nothing about it. Because I'm telling you right now, the last 30 or so years, the Packers could say something about the Bears on camera. We couldn't do nothing about it. So I mean,
Yeah.
because they would just kick our ass either way it goes. So
Fair enough. I think ultimately, the hire is one that I like. Like I said, at the beginning of this whole thing, I said I think you guys got the popular girl. I think you got the belle of the ball. This is everything that you wanted. This is what we wanted for fantasy purposes. This is what we needed. There should be, keep in mind, keyword should be, significant improvements fantasy football wise from this offense, which is going to be perfect for Caleb Williams and Rome and DJ and all of these guys. So I'm very excited for those people in my fantasy football leagues. I guess those places that I have those guys. Now, notable hires, I think honestly you guys have done a hell of a job. I think the staff that Ben Johnson is building
yeah.
is probably, of the coaches that we talk about today, it's probably the best staff, I think, top to bottom that he's went through. So I'll just list off some of this stuff. Offensive coordinator, he's bringing in Declan Doyle, who was a previous tight ends coach for the Denver Broncos, and Sean Payton. It's
Teacher's
not going to matter.
assistant.
Yeah, I was going to say it's not going to matter too much because Ben Johnson's going to be the one calling plays. It's not going to be Declan. So he's there to hold the clipboard and say, good job, coach. Good job, coach. That's probably what he's going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Defensive coordinator, smash hire, Dennis Allen coming in, formerly head coach of the New Orleans Saints. I think that's going to be a hell of a hire. Always has some of the top defenses in football when he is that defensive coordinator. So that should be good. He's bringing over a few of his buddies from Detroit as well. You get JT Barrett. He's coming from the Detroit Lions where he was the assistant quarterbacks coach. He gets the promotion to quarterbacks coach. So he's going to be working with Caleb Williams now. You also have the wide receiver coach and assistant head coach. They tagged on assistant head coach to make it feel like it was a promotion for Antoine Randall L. He's also coming from the Detroit Lions, but that should be a good hire as well. If people
From
are not familiar,
Chicago.
yeah, this is the guy who was in JMO's ass, chewing him out, talking about like, you got to get it together. He's going to be a great coach for the wide receivers there in Chicago. And then sneaky hire that I think a lot of people didn't really clock when it came through, Eric Bieniemy coming in as the running back coach.
Yeah.
For this team. So he obviously spent time with the Washington Commanders a year ago or a few years ago, also spending a lot of time in Kansas City. Bieniemy coming in as the running backs coach too. This is a lot of head coaching talent and just coaching experience, I think, in this room. And that is strategic in my opinion, because Ben Johnson obviously not being the head coach before, you get former head coaches and former offensive coordinators and former defensive coordinators that have done this for a long time that are all going to come in and help him.
You know what? And there's one more I want to throw in there too. Because there was actually they have 5 good assistant coach hires. You mentioned 4 of them: Bieniemy, Allen, JT Barrett, and Antoine Randall L. The other sneaky hire is and I don't want to. I'm going to look at, because I don't want to say Al Snow, who's a wrestler, and I know that's what I'm going to do. But the wide receivers, not the wide receiver, the cornerbacks coach that came over from Detroit, I think Al Harris. Al Harris. Yeah, he's gonna be another big hire for them. Like, because his first order of business, he just went directly after the moronic cornerback that which I don't know why. I think it's early, so I forget his name. Yeah, he went after him immediately and like enrolled him in some type of training like as soon as he got hired.
Get your shit together, son.
Yeah, I like that. I think they need that edge online. If you think about it, they just did not like, okay, I'm gonna try to be nice as possible. We've all seen off-season hard knocks with the Bears. We've seen off-season hard knocks. And I'm sorry, from GM down to coach's assistant, honestly, that was one of the softest like collection of leadership that I've seen since being a Chicago. I'm sorry, like, and I'm not even being on they had a girl on the staff. I think that's fine. But, it was all smiles with her. Like, if like all of them as a collective needed to be tougher on the players. And I think that's where a lot of the problems came in with the accountability. Like there was literally just a head coach that seemed like he was scared to address players. And if you listen to the podcast of his former Colts players, that seemed to be an ongoing thing with him, even as an assistant coach, is that like he was scared to get in the face of, I don't even know if I should say scared. He shied away from getting in the face of a lot of the players, and I just think that was prevalent on coaching staff. But now they're straight dogs on this coaching staff. Like I heard someone say that Dennis Allen's temperament is similar to Eberflus's, where he's a nice guy and stuff like that. That's fine, because I'll tell you right now who's not a nice guy: Eric B. Enemy. Because that's what they call him, Eric B. Enemy. Like, and then Al Harris, Antoine Randall, like guys like they're not going to be playing around with these players, and that's what
Some
they need
dudes
on the
that'll cuss you
sidelines.
out.
Yeah, that's what they need. Like, and I can't think of one assistant coach on the Bears last season that would do that. Like, they had the one guy on Hard Knocks that was giving like the 12th stringer running back a hard time, but like
Talking about Ian Wheeler or whatever his name was.
yeah, like, but I mean, I think they need people even more intense than that. I tell you right
Yeah.
now, Eric Bieniemy probably been like, man, get your stupid stuff. No, he probably would have been really tearing them apart. So
Yeah. No, I
I
mean,
want
obviously.
coaches on the sidelines that's gonna make the players want to complain to HR. That's what I want.
Yeah. I mean,
Like,
you don't want coaches that are going to shy away from coaching. That's just the hard truth. So, having some guys that are there to coach and there to coach tough, that's what you want. Speaking of some tough coaches, we got a tough coach here in New England. Mike Vrabel actually comes over
mm,
as the head coach. Obviously the former Tennessee Titans head coach in 2018. He's led that Titans team to a 54-45 record over his 6 seasons. He played in 3 playoff games and was named the AP NFL Coach of the Year in 2021. He comes over now as the head coach for the New England Patriots. He played for the New England Patriots during his
yeah,
playing career. When I'm looking at this press conference and when I'm listening to it, there's really 5 key takeaways that I really came away with. One of them is he wants a cultural reset. He wants to emphasize the accountability, the hard work, the competitiveness, the competition. He feels like the New England Patriots have gotten away from some of that, and not just like being competitive in games, being competitive in practice and in the weight room, and being, competitive in the film room and things like that. Like, he wants people who are going to be there to work their ass off. He also wants to work in collaboration with Elliott Wolf. Sounds like they are going to be pretty much hip to hip for the first year or two of their career, hopefully longer than that while they're here. But they're going to be trying to make roster decisions together. It's not going to be just the GM making the decisions and the head coach coaching the football team. They're going to be trying to do this as one unit. He went with a entirely new coaching staff, a complete overhaul. He wants significant changes there. He's going to be focusing on teaching and inspiring the players through new coaches that he believes have the NFL experience that are going to help them grow. Player development wise, he wants to get players that are going to fit the scheme. He wants players that are going to come in and excel in the system that he has. And he wants to establish the run, because he believes that establishing the run is going to open up this game for Drake May, because then he's going to be able to do some more with his arm. And then last thing that I had is like a big takeaway here was he wants a personal connection with the players, because he has a personal connection with the Patriots. He wants to honor the team. He wants to honor the history. He takes pride in being a former New England Patriot, and he wants all of his players to take pride in being a New England Patriot as well. So it seems like he's going to kind of dial in on that culture and that pride of being a Patriot and what that means to this organization. So those are kind of the takeaways that I had from the press conference. I think really when you're looking at Vrabel as a hire, this is I think this is a good hire. I don't think that this is like a smash hire where you're like superly excited for fantasy football reasons, but I think this is going to be fine for Drake May. I think this is going to be fine for guys like Ramondre Stevenson potentially. Obviously we know that Vrabel wants to establish the run, but is he going to be the running back there? I don't know. We have a deep running back class. We have some other stuff that is potentially going to happen. He just got the extension, so maybe he is there for one more year, but this is a roster that needs work. So when we're talking about fantasy football options, I mean, it starts and pretty much ends with Drake May, and
yeah.
we'll see what else is really there. They're going to have a ton of money in free agency. They can maybe go get some wide receivers. They can maybe go get some other stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if right out the gate, Vrabel wants to go overhaul that defense. He's kind of a defensive guy, wants to go pay some money to get some defensive ends and rush the passer, and maybe they end up being a team that drafts a guy like Ted McMillan or something like that, just to bring some extra help in the wide receiver room. But overall, man, I think it's a pretty decent hire. What are your thoughts, and how do you feel about some of the fantasy options?
I feel pretty good about it. Mainly because even though I kind of just used him as like a negative in the last coach Josh McDaniels, I think if it's one thing he's kind of proven is that he's a good assistant coach. He's a good offensive coordinator. He's actually one of the pioneers of like up tempo offense. So I think that would make very good for Drake May in fantasy. I think that would actually benefit him. I honestly don't think they have a relevant receiver on their team. Like, I don't even look at the Patriots as having a receiver. I think you have a guy in Pop Douglas. I mean, we'll see. I won't write him off completely, but right now he's still in that just the guy territory. And after him, there's nothing. Running back, we have Ramondre Stevenson that's starting to be at the wrong age. And then tight end Hunter Henry, he's already the wrong age. So really, Josh McDaniels working with nothing. I think they're going to be one of the more active teams on the offensive side of the ball this offseason. So we'll see where that stacks and where that ends up. As far as overhauling the defense, I feel like they do have some pieces on defense. I think they do have some pieces there, but he's still probably going to overhaul it because even though he has pieces there, it's not a complete defense. So, and he's like you said, he's a defensive guy. So I think that's where that goes. But yeah, my biggest takeaway is going to be just Josh McDaniels. I think that he's going to do well there. The question is going to be, we haven't really seen him in the offensive coordinator role for the Patriots, not for a coach not named Bill Belichick. So I'm interested to see how that dynamic works for one of his former players being the head coach now. So, I
Yep.
mean, let's see how that goes because I'm pretty sure there's a part of Josh McDaniels' hope wishing that he would have eventually been, the head coach there. So instead,
Yeah.
it ended up being Mike Vrabel. So we'll see how that dynamic works, man.
Yeah, I mean, so you just touched on it a little bit. Notable hires here as well with Josh McDaniels, who was the offensive coordinator hire here. Obviously, people are gonna recognize him from time in New England, and then also he was the Raiders coach for a while that did not work out. Neither did his Denver Broncos head coaching job that he had a while back either. But I think some people in New England are excited about Josh McDaniels as an OC for Drake May. Additionally, we have some other guys that I think we could talk about. Terrell Williams comes over as defensive coordinator. He worked with Vrabel in Tennessee and most recently with the Detroit Lions. So that's a pretty decent hire there on the defensive side of the ball. Thomas Brown, your OC head coach, whatever that guy was through whatever part of the season you're looking at, he comes over as the tight end and passing game coordinator. So obviously he worked with the Rams and then he worked with the Chicago Bears. Doug Marrone comes over as the offensive line coach. He brings a ton of NFL experience, was a head coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars for a while. And then Ashton Grant comes over as the quarterback coach. He worked with Vrabel in Tennessee and with the Cleveland Browns last year when Vrabel was, I don't really remember what Vrabel was, kind of like an offensive assistant or something type of assistant for the Browns.
Yeah, yeah.
But he wasn't doing too much. It seemed like he was just like bored at home and he's like, I'll just go to Cleveland practices just for fun. But yeah, that's a guy that he pulled over to be the quarterback coach here. But really, the notable one and the one that's probably the most flashy is going to be that Josh McDaniels hire.
Yeah, and that's really the hire that's going to determine how fantasy football goes for the players that are on the Patriots.
100%. Well, let's talk about another team. I think this one was mine. You'll have to remind me. I think this one was mine. We kind of split off watching press conferences. It's gonna be Liam Coen, head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars, formerly the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator. They saw significant improvement. I wouldn't say a significant improvement, but he definitely was impressive last year as the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, people at home, they're going to be looking at this, and there was some drama, man. There was some drama in this whole thing. He was signing to be the highest paid offensive coordinator ever with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and then had a family emergency, and then the phone didn't work anymore, and then he was on a flight to Jacksonville, and then he was signing in Jacksonville as the head coach and not returning phone calls, and yeah, there was some drama that happened with this one, but ultimately Liam Coen ends up as the offensive coordinator or as the head coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And then immediately after all of that drama, he has a viral clip hit the internet because he's down there in Jacksonville going, Duval. That's that's what that man's hitting out there in Jacksonville. So this was mine, right? I remember this now. I watched this press conference. When it came down to it, man, 5 things. Here's the thing. Culture first. He wants to establish a winning culture. He wants to have high standards for his players. That's, I feel like, the cookie cutter thing that every coach wants to say.
Yeah.
He is going to call plays for his offense. So the offensive coordinator here, yes, it's going to be the clipboard assistant. That it's going to be the same thing. Liam Coen is calling the plays, which is good because Liam Coen is a good play caller. At least that's what we've seen in Tampa Bay in his short term there. He wants to focus on building this team around Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is his franchise quarterback. That's part of the reason why he wanted this job. He says building the offense around quarterback and building it around Trevor specifically is going to be what takes this offense to the next level. So if you have Trevor in your dynasty leagues, that's exactly what you want to hear because you need an offensive type of head coach to come in here and try and use Trevor Lawrence because Trevor Lawrence has not been up to the expectations so far in his career. So we will see if he can get that. He emphasized that this is not a 4-win team. We're not a 4-win team. Believes that they have the talent to exceed that 2024 record of 4 wins. So he says, it may have been 4 this year, but we're better than that. So we'll see if that happens. I think that's another one where the clip could come back and they win 4 games next year. And he said, we're not a 4-win team. And it's going to be hit with the Duval again. It's going to be all that shit at once. And then last but not least, he wants to make an emphasis on players over plays, as he says. Focus on the players over the plays, focusing on physical and fast gameplay is what he said. So they're going to play fast. He tried to give us like some acronym.
But I was just going to look it up.
It was pretty hard to follow along with. I don't know what the hell that man was talking about. And look, you know what? We've seen coaches come in and have bad press conferences. This was not a great press conference from Liam Coen. No. There was a lot of uncomfortable situations. I was getting flashbacks of Adam Gase, like looking around the room and shit. Like it was bad. But overall, I think this is a good hire for Jacksonville. What you got for me?
I got your acronym for you. It's called FAST. It's called the FAST principle. Fundamentally sound, attacking, situational masters, and tough. Which isn't even the correct acronym. It's like that's like fast. Something like, I don't
Whatever,
know, man.
dude.
I don't
That's
know.
what I said. That's why I said physical and fast gameplay is what he wanted, but I don't know what he was trying to do.
Drew, do you know what some, because I listen to a lot of Chicago radio. One of the hosts out there on the radio station, they said something that if you think about it, it actually tracks. He said 90% of the coaches that use acronyms in their introductory press conferences fail. That's whether you're going to have this guy with the FAST principle, Matt Eberflus with the hits principle. Like, those guys just fail because, just like you said about his first, like, the cookie cutter BS, like, thing to say, that's another cookie cutter BS thing. Like, coming up with acronyms is almost like a way to, like, make it seem like you got a plan when you actually don't. Like, so, like, these things, like, all these things in this acronym should come naturally to a football player. A football player should play fast. A football player should be fundamentally sound. They should be attacking the situational masters and tough. Like, you don't have to create an acronym for that. That's not a plan.
It's kind of like it's real Ted Lasso-ish, man. Like you're coming in and role playing like a head coach. Like this is a role play situation for this man. Like he's pretending to be a head coach right now. And it's just, I don't know, man. I didn't love it. I got flashbacks watching it. I was cringing a lot watching his whole introductory thing. But between the Duval and the acronyms and just the goofy nature of he's just a goofy dude, man. But you know what?
It's hard, Drew, because like I picture his face of him saying Duval, and it's funny because I bet you in his head he thought he was really doing something cool. Like,
how's that for you?
Yeah, like he probably really thought he got it. He was like, Duval.
Bro was really hitting that thing. Like it was bad. I just, like I said, man, I was getting flashbacks of Adam Gase looking around the room in the press conference, and I was getting flashbacks of Jonathan Gannon dapping up Kyler Murray, talking about pew 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 pew. You remember that?
Hey, but maybe he's Nick Sirianni. Sirianni, because Nick Sirianni was mumble mouth during his introductory press conference. So,
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
see.
We'll see. Anyways, there's a lot to take away. I don't want us clowning the cringiness of the press conference to take away from the fact that I do think this is good offensively for the Jaguars. Like,
Yeah.
I think this is an improvement for them. Fantasy football wise, we should be pretty excited about this because what we've
Mhm.
seen from Cohen should mean good things for some of these Jaguars options. So I am excited about that from a fantasy lens. Notable hires that he brought along with him. Really, nobody that like I think are going to be household names that people know at home. Brought over a defensive coordinator.
Because of how he went there, because of how it happened. Like I
Yeah,
guaranteed that played a role.
for sure. I think his staff is fairly weak compared to some of the other guys' staffs, just because of not being able to get any of those big secondary coaches' names. I would say the only one really that is somewhat impressive and really probably only known by me because he's a former Minnesota Vikings guy, is he brings over offensive coordinator Grant Udinsky, but at the end of the day, we said clipboard's assistant. He's not calling plays, so it's not really going to matter too much anyways. But he's a sharp mind. I think he's a young mind, young coach that probably is gonna, if Liam Cohen succeeds, should get the honorary. You're gonna get interviews as a head coach potentially down the road. But other than that,
Do you
a
think
lot of guys coming over from Green Bay. He has Spencer Whipple coming over from Arizona as the QB coach, and then Tim Lukabu, I think that's how you say his name, from the Carolina Panthers.
Do you think that the clipboard holders, the teachers' assistants, do you think that those positions are given to those young guys because they eventually will lead them to being able to take full on offensive coordinator jobs down the road? Because, like, even for Declan Door or from the guy that came from Minnesota, I don't think that they'll be able to parlay that into a head coaching role because they know that the actual head coach is the ones calling plays, but it could lead to them being the offensive coordinator for a defensive head coach down the road. You think that's the mindset in it and why they're bringing in younger guys to do that?
Yes and no. I want to remind you, Coach of the Year, Kevin O'Connell was a clipboard assistant for Sean McVay.
Okay, very
So
true, very true.
you know what? I think there's people where it can work, where you can get that immediate jump, and there's people where it can't work. And in all fairness, too,
Thomas Brown.
O'Connell was coming from a unique situation where they had just won a Super Bowl, so
Mhm.
that's very different, I think. But at the same time, like I think there's two different situations where that can go. Obviously, you have to come in, you have to interview, and you have to be impressive, and you have to show that you know what you're doing. And I think Kevin O'Connell checked every single one of those boxes when he came through. But at the end of the day, like these guys are going to be teachers' assistants, offensive coordinators, clipboard holders, whatever we want to call them. And I don't say that to like demote the role that they're in, but these guys are basically what's the word I'm looking for? Little proteges. They're going to be little proteges to the offensive minded head coach, and hopefully learn from them and take some stuff. And yeah, I think that they can use it to bounce into a offensive coordinator role, hopefully where they are calling plays and or maybe get a fast pass, like at Disneyland when you get the fast pass and just skip the offensive coordinator role entirely and go straight to the head coaching interview.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
Anyways, I will sum it up. Duval. But good coaching hire. Let's go on to the next coach. This is your guy, Aaron Glenn, head coach of the New York Jets. Defensive coordinator in 2022, started there for the Detroit Lions, was a big contributor for the turnaround from their bad 3-13 record to consecutive winning seasons there in the NFC North. He also started his playing career for the New York Jets, played 15 seasons, and was drafted in the first round in 1994. So it's kind of a return home for Aaron Glenn. But you watched the press conference, you listened to some of this stuff. What are your takeaways here for Aaron Glenn?
Clip this, Andrew. Clip it.
All right.
Because you didn't give me Aaron Glenn.
Is it me?
Yeah, you gave me Vrabel. That's why when you did Vrabel, I was like, you gave me Vrabel, Schottenheimer, and Ben Johnson.
Good thing I took notes for everybody. Aaron Glenn.
Yeah.
My 5 takeaways. Aaron Glenn. My 5 takeaways from this press conference. I'm sorry, I just went back to back to back. He had an emphasis on culture and accountability. He was really stressing the importance of setting a strong culture, holding the players accountable. Really referenced a lot of his old experience here with the Jets as a former player. Kind of pulled that same card that Vrabel was kind of pulling. One thing that I found interesting is that Aaron Glenn said that he will not call defensive plays. He is not going to be calling the defensive plays. So Aaron Glenn is only going to be the head coach. He is going to let the defensive coordinator call the plays, and he's going to let the offensive coordinator call the plays. He is going to monitor, which I think in a way is better for some of these first-time head coaches, because when you have
Yeah.
all of that accountability or all of the responsibility, it can be overwhelming. So he said he's not going to be calling that, and he said there's going to be a significant importance on getting a good defensive coordinator hired there in the building. He talked a lot about a vision for winning. Said he wants to, well, he started it off with, we're the freaking New York Jets. We're built for this shit. That's kind of the soundbite that came through. So he wanted to talk about the confidence and turning it around, said that they've been through tough times. They're going to get through tough times, and they're going to come out as a winning team on the other end. I think we've heard this a billion times from Jets coaches, but it's what came through. Connection, he talked a lot about the connection to the Jets. Like I said, his playing team, being scouted by them, scouting for the Jets previously. Like, he's worked in this building before, and he talked a lot about how he has that organizational experience. And then he got a ton of Aaron Rodgers questions and was very non-committal to Aaron Rodgers as the quarterback. And then since that press conference, we've also got news now that the New York Jets are going to be moving on from Aaron Rodgers. So he was non-committal for a reason. They didn't want to move forward with him, and he just didn't want to say that at the press conference. So he is going to be looking for the next quarterback of the New York Jets. I don't know if that's going to be via the draft, via free agency. Maybe they're going to go trade for a guy like Derek Carr or Kirk Cousins. I don't know what's going to happen, but they're going to be looking for a new QB here in the building. So look, Aaron Glenn, he's the hire. I think Aaron Glenn is an impressive human being. I don't see him as a real difference to what you had in Robert Saleh. And
Bingo.
maybe he's a little bit more inspirational and can talk to the players a little bit better than Saleh did. But at the end of the day, I think scheme-wise and mentality-wise and all of that stuff, I think you're getting a better, maybe a slightly better or more inspirational version of what Robert Saleh was.
I don't even think you're getting that, dude. Like, because I did pay deep attention to Eric Glenn, even though I didn't take no notes on him. Here's the thing, man. Like, going off of what you just said, Robert Saleh, you have to take yourself back a little bit. At the time when Robert Saleh was the first time, he was the defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. That team, that defense was very successful. He was the hot coaching candidate to come out the season after. And we're having the same thing with Aaron Glenn here. I honestly, on this day, cannot tell you who's better between Robert Saleh and Aaron Glenn. All I know is that Robert Saleh was so impressive that the 49ers went and brought him back. Like, he was highly coveted this offseason. He was the highest coveted defensive coordinator this offseason. And that's why the 49ers brought him back. He could have had coaching opportunities. He did go on interviews. He went on an interview in Duval, but he didn't get the job. So, I think this comes with a lot of nerve for me because as a Bears fan, but I think the Jets are a poverty franchise because they're literally just going to and it's sad because unlike the Bears who got lucky and drafted number 1 overall in the quarterback draft to have like 5 good quarterbacks or more, the Jets don't have that luxury. Like, what are they going to do? Honestly, they should have just thought a little more of it for keeping Aaron Rodgers because for fantasy purposes, I can tell you now, Aaron Rodgers is a top 15 quarterback in Superflex. So let's not get that twisted. But I don't know, Andrew. I don't know what they're gonna do, dude. Like, them getting a free agent veteran, that seems like typical Jets because it never works out. Them drafting a quarterback in a bad draft, you get shades of Mark Sanchez, Geno Smith. Like, anything they could do at the quarterback position this offseason just seems like history repeating itself. Bad history. So like, I don't know, man. Honestly, here's what I would do if I were the Jets. I wouldn't even focus on bringing in a good quarterback. I wouldn't care. I would focus on the trenches, and I would just build up the trenches until there's a draft where the quarterbacks are actually good, which I think according to you is what, 26, 27? I would be in the Arch Manning sweepstakes. Like,
The next 2 years should be much better quarterback play than what we
Yeah,
have in this year's class.
this isn't the year.
I'll just be honest too. Like, I don't think the Jets are going to have the opportunity to draft a quarterback in the future unless they want to trade, significantly and move up. Because I was looking at the draft order yesterday, and I firmly believe at this point in time, with the draft order the way that it is, I think Cam Ward ends up number 2 overall to the Cleveland Browns, and I think number 3 overall is Shedeur Sanders, and I think he ends up going to the New York Giants. So I don't think that either of the 2 quarterbacks that are going to be worth a damn are going to end up in the Jets' lap at 7, because they're picking at 7, I think. So I don't think
Do
they're.
you can you see a scenario where the Jets do something stupid like draft Jackson Dart at that spot?
If they do, it's gonna be highly, highly egregious. It's just not gonna be. It's not gonna be. Look, I like Dart enough. I think Dart. I'm not gonna throw no crazy comps out here, but I think Dart is above average right now. So I'm not super impressed. If it were me right now, the way that I'm operating for my fantasy football teams, and I know that's different than NFL franchises, but the way that I'm operating for my dynasty teams is like, if it's not Cam and it's not Shador, I don't really care. Like, I'm just
Yeah.
not too invested in this quarterback class outside of those 2. There's gonna be guys. There's always guys. Like, I think Jalen Milroe in the right situation could maybe be fantasy relevant because of his rushing upside and things like that. But
Yeah.
I'm just not, bending over backwards to go get any of these quarterbacks on my dynasty rosters, and I don't think NFL teams should be doing that either. That
So
said,
you're not saying you're not in the Dylan Gabriel sweepstake.
nah, nah. And I don't think I don't think that the Jets should be worrying about that either, because like I said, they have some other issues as well. Garrett Wilson it sounds like there's a lot of smoke right now about him not being happy in the situation that he's in and potentially wanting to request a trade out of New York. And if he does request that trade, obviously they're going to have the option to either grant that or not grant that. But we've seen how the flustered wide receiver situation can go, and I don't know if the Jets are in the situation to just hold on to Garrett Wilson if he doesn't want to play while they're in a rebuild. I think at that point you probably let him go find a trade and get a bag of draft capital to just keep rebuilding this thing and let him go, which is unfortunate for Jets fans because I think Garrett Wilson's a star. But yeah, it's not looking great overall. And for the fantasy football options, honestly, to me, this changes nothing. I don't think that there's really anything here that's going to make me very excited about guys. I don't think I'm lower on them than I was today, or lower on them today than I was yesterday. It's all the same to me, because like I said, I feel like this is a glorified Robert Saleh rehire. And when you look at the other hires that they made here on this offense, Steve Wilks comes over as the defensive coordinator, so that's a pretty good defensive coordinator hire. Obviously a proven track record there as a DC, so that does kind of clock what Aaron Glenn was saying, where he wants to get another good defensive play caller in here, and he can trust Steve Wilks to make those plays. Chris Banjo comes in as special teams coordinator. He worked with Aaron Glenn in New Orleans. Steve Hayden comes in as the offensive line head coach, and he's going to be transitioning from Detroit's tight end coach, and now he's going to an offensive line coach. So that's going to be a little interesting to see that transition from a tight end coach to a offensive line coach. And then Tanner Engstrand, I think is the way that you say it. Tanner Engstrand is coming over as the offensive coordinator for the Jets, and he was the passing game coordinator behind Ben Johnson in Detroit. So a lot of Detroit hires coming over here. Detroit's gotten absolutely gutted over the last, month and a half, because Ben Johnson brought over some Detroit guys, Aaron Glenn's brought over some Detroit guys, and now Dan Campbell is left with a coaching staff with a ton of holes that he's going to be filling up over the next couple of months. So yeah, overall, nothing crazy. Steve Wilkes is obviously a good hire. Engstrand, we'll see what happens. Being the passing game coordinator behind Ben Johnson, I don't know what that entails, but maybe that was one of those glorified teacher's assistants jobs that's now you've got the promotion. You have been promoted. That is what has happened. So anyways, any other takeaways from Aaron Glenn, or you feel the same way I feel, as if this doesn't change
Man,
for fantasy?
this is just a retread, man. It's a retread. Hopefully they figured out by now that they should actually be tanking this upcoming season to get a quarterback at all costs.
Yeah, I agree. I think what do you think about the idea? I'm gonna throw this out here. it may just be way out there, but is there a chance that we should be just throwing a little bit of draft capital or something out there to the Jordan Travis owners, and maybe Jordan Travis is the starting quarterback this year after they drafted him last year as a rookie?
I mean, yeah, let him roll.
I kind of liked Jordan Travis as a prospect. I thought he was sneaky. Obviously, he was coming off of the injury. I don't know. He seems interesting. Maybe he's worth a
That'll
little.
be a good. That's a good problem to have. If you roll Jordan Travis out there, he exceeds expectations, then that's one less thing you got to focus on going into the next draft. But if he doesn't have it, you still leave him out there because you're tanking.
Yeah, and then you just replace him.
Yeah, or he does well and you still do bad, and you trade him or trade the pick. Justin Fields, Caleb Williams situation all over
Yeah,
again.
for sure.
So
Not a bad idea. Let's move on over. We got three more coaches to talk about, not a ton of time, so we'll move on over to your guy officially, Brian Schottenheimer. Served as the offensive coordinator for several teams throughout his career, included the New York Jets from 2006 to 2011, the St. Louis Rams from 2012 to 2014, Seattle Seahawks from 2018 to 2020, and last year the offensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. You have been promoted head coach now after being the offensive coordinator. What are the takeaways from this press conference for Brian Schottenheimer?
I'm gonna tell you what the problem is right now, Brian Schottenheimer. The main, if this line encapsulates everything, it's a couple things that encapsulates this entire situation. One is Brian Schottenheimer saying, and I quote, "My father was a legendary coach. If he was here now, he'd say, Brian, the easy part is over. Time to get to work." That's the problem, is that Brian Schottenheimer is kind of a nepo baby. He's kind of a nepo baby, rest in peace, Marty Schottenheimer. But the thing is, your son is not you. Your son is not you. He's probably an average to below average offensive coordinator, and he was hired to be Jerry Jones' patsy. Brian Schottenheimer, more quotes from Brian Schottenheimer. "I'm not doing this by myself. I have an incredible support system. My message to the Cowboys fans and communities, we're going to do this together and build it together." Just cookie cutter bullshit that every coach says. He does believe that him and Dak have a similar view of how they view the offense, and I think that that's just more cookie cutter BS. Because I think that's everything about the Cowboys to me is average. The only thing that's not average about the Cowboys is CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons. Everything else about the Cowboys, and maybe Diggs,
Yeah.
maybe Diggs. I mean, if they ask Stephon Diggs, it'll be an interesting little team. But the thing is, man, Dak is a generic quarterback, even though I think he's very productive for fantasy purposes. Dak is a generic quarterback. And this coach is milquetoast. I don't know. Jerry Jones literally brought him in to be just his puppet. And everybody sees it. All the fans see it. All the media see it. This guy, he doesn't really have anything. He touches on, his days with Pete Carroll and how he learned so much from Pete Carroll. I'm sorry, man. Brian Schottenheimer does nothing to inspire belief in successful football. I'm sorry. And if I feel like that, I imagine the players feel like that. So if I was a player for the Dallas Cowboys, I would feel like Jerry Jones is the head coach. And this guy's just my name is Brian Schottenheimer. That's how I look at this situation, man. They're gonna go up tempo, stuff dude, everything about it is just because he was already on the team. The offense already wasn't good enough, and he got a promotion, like you said.
You
I
have
don't know,
been
dude.
promoted.
I think we were talking off camera. I think that he's the most lamest of lame duck coaches in this hiring cycle.
Yep.
I really do believe it. If Dion decides after this upcoming season that, oh yeah, I want to coach the Cowboys now, Brian Schottenheimer's one and done. He's one and done. He's one and done. He's a bridge coach. And to be honest, he probably was only hired because Dion probably was like, oh man, this is all too sudden. I don't want to just get up and go coach in the NFL right now. Now Dion will have a whole entire season to prepare and do background stuff to eventually accept that position.
And if Colorado is not good post Sanders boys leaving, it may
Oh,
be
he's
very
gone.
interesting, and Hunter not being there too. But yeah, I mean, I agree, dude. This to me, I said it to you off camera. Lame duck hire of the cycle. I'm
Mhm.
not interested in this at all. I'm not inspired by this at all. Very reminiscent, I think, of the Gerard Mayo hire last year, where you're talking about a guy who came in one and done just because he's kind of put in his time with the organization and it's his turn. I just don't think that this is great. I mean, there's one thing that stood out to me when I watched some of this press conference is just he made sure to emphasize the fact that he said he felt like he was ready now because he has been unprepared for jobs in years past. That's what he said, like something like that, like where he said he has felt unprepared in his past for coaching jobs. And to me, that was just like, oh shit, like you do
That's
not
not good.
don't say that part out loud at the press conference. Like, don't do that. That's not what you. This is not the time or place. Keep that behind closed doors. Do not say that. Just don't give the public the ability to look at you and say, yeah, he's not the guy for the job. I think another thing too is just that the fact that he was obviously the offensive coordinator last year for the Cowboys, and he came in and said that he wants to just focus on continuity. He wants to be a version of the Mike McCarthy offense. He wants to keep it somewhat the same. He said I'm going to put my own tweaks on the offense, but I think it's good for us to keep pretty much the same stuff going on. So,
That's what you do if you fire the head coach mid-season and he takes over as the interim coach. Like this guy, he's a lame duck dude. Like
it's
you
the
don't
writing's on the
you don't
wall.
tweak. Yeah, you don't just tweak when you're taking over as the head coach to begin the offseason. You don't just tweak the offense. You reshape it to whatever it could be successful. He's not an assistant taking over a head coach in the middle of the season. This dude talks like a clipboard holder for a head coach, and I think that's how it's gonna play out.
Yeah, it's not good. Some of the hires that he's had have been. There's one that stands out. It's Matt Eberflus. Matt Eberflus comes in as the defensive coordinator. Obviously, spent time as the Indianapolis Colts defensive coordinator, and when he was the DC of the Colts, that was one of the top ranked defenses in the NFL.
Yeah,
So,
he's a good DC.
I think Eberflus is a great hire for them defensively. Obviously, you have bad experience with Eberflus as a head coach, but other than
Yeah,
that, Clayton Adams comes over as the offensive coordinator. He comes from the Indianapolis Colts. He was the offensive line coach last year. I think they're going to focus on probably building a strong offensive line with him there. But that doesn't wow me. Although I think Bryant Schottenheimer is going to be the one calling plays. Connor Riley coming over as the offensive line coach. He was previously coaching at Kansas State. So coming from NCAA going to the NFL now. Worked with some of the Cowboys offensive linemen during their college years. You have Derek Foster, who's coming in as the running backs coach. He came from the Miami Dolphins. So obviously, that's a good run game over there in Miami. Should hopefully help this run game a little bit. And then Dave Borgonzi is coming in as the linebackers coach. He's
he's a good
returning.
coach.
Yeah, he's returning to Dallas after working with Eberflus in Chicago. Is that's how you say his name?
Yeah, Dave
Borgonzi.
Berganzi. Yeah,
Borgonzi.
Dave Berganzi. Yeah,
Yeah, so he's coming over too. And obviously with him too, that's going to be like a 4-3 scheme that they ran for the last couple of years.
yeah, yeah.
Anyways, those are kind of the hires. I don't think anything crazy
All might get
outside of
fired.
the defensive side of the ball. You probably like Eberflus and some of those other hires defensively, but that's about that. Let's move on to our next coach, Pete Carroll. Petey boy comes in as the Las Vegas, almost said Oakland, not sure why, almost said Oakland, but Las Vegas Raiders head coach. Obviously started his coaching career in '94 with the New York Jets. Obviously that's just his pro coaching career. New England Patriots from '97 to '99 is the head coach, and then what everybody knows him for, 2010 to 2023 as the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, leading them to a Super Bowl victory in 2013, and also known for creating or helping create and coach the Legion of Boom. When I'm looking at this press conference and when I listen to this press conference, there's some takeaways here. He wants a cultural transformation is basically what he called it. Wants to emphasize on building a winning culture, focusing on player development, competition, enjoying the game of football is one of the key things that he said. He wants his players to enjoy playing football again because he felt like the Raiders players didn't enjoy football last year from his lens. So that's one of the key things. He wants to be in collaboration with the GM, John Spidek. Spidik, however you say his name. He's coming in. Yeah, he's coming in. He wants to be collaborative with him. They want to have a strong partnership. And he is very vocal about wanting to have an emphasis on team building and strategy in team building with his GM to get the strengths of his coaching involved. He's going to focus on the defense. Says that he has a defensive background. It's evident. He said he spoke about reinforcing the defense when he was building the Legion of Boom in Seattle. He wants to not necessarily rebuild the Legion of Boom. That would be very impossible to do, but he wants to focus on improving the Raiders defensively first and foremost. He said he wants to lead by experience. Brought up a extensive list of coaching experience that he has and the leadership that he had in each of those roles. And he said he's promising to leverage that to stabilize and elevate the Raiders. I think the stabilization was an interesting statement from him because it kind of admitted that he feels like the Raiders have been an unstable franchise for a while, and he's trying to get some stability there. And then lastly, he kind of talked about a long-term vision. A lot of people kind of question him because of the age. Obviously, he's a very old head coach at this point, but he said despite his age, he's making it clear that he's here for a long haul. Says he wants to implement a succession strategy for when he eventually steps down, which I felt like was interesting that he's talking about being here for the long haul, but in the same breath talking about he's going to have a plan for stepping down. I just thought that was a little bit of a catch-22. But overall, when I'm looking at the hire of Pete Carroll, this felt like, kind of given the cards that were played and the cards that were, available, this felt like pretty much best case scenario for Las Vegas. I think after missing out on the Ben Johnson stuff, there was not a lot of places left to turn. And Pete felt like, what you're getting with this hire. And that's a good coach. It may not be the best offensive coach and it may not be the best to build around for the long haul or for fantasy football purposes, but at the end of the day, this is going to be a coach that probably brings a lot of leadership, a lot of experience, and a lot of I think he's going to be the guy to help set the culture in the building in Las Vegas. And honestly, he's a guy that I think a lot of players will just rally around. Pete Carroll's likable as hell, man. I think people want to be around Pete Carroll in the NFL.
Yeah, 100% agree. Pete Carroll, man, I felt he was in my top 5 choices of who I would have wanted to coach the Bears. He was like 4 or 5, but he was up there. I think that when he says that he wants to stabilize the franchise, I think that's actually an apropos statement. And if his plan to step down also includes building up and training someone under him so that when he steps down, that person will be ready, I think that also be a good idea. I think I heard this term the other day in regards to how the Bears should approach this offseason. I'm going to use this same term on the Raiders. The Raiders need to have a few years of eat your vegetables. A few to eat your vegetables. Stop trying to be the flashiest team because it never works out. It never works out. You trade for AB, look at what happened. You trade for Devontae Adams, look at what happened. For the next few seasons while Pete is helping to stabilize the franchise, try to win. Don't let winning be your priority. And I'm not saying don't go out and try to win, but look, you're in a division with the Chiefs, you're in the Chargers, and the rising Broncos with a rising young quarterback. You guys do not even have a quarterback. Honestly, they should trade Max Crosby. But Pete is just there to stabilize the damn thing. I think they need to just get back to the fundamentals of team building. Start with the trenches for that team. Get that team ready and set to be able to add those huge pieces going forward. And maybe in Pete's final 2 seasons, you guys are able to get a quarterback and actually see what Pete Carroll can bring to the table as a head coach. But I think right now, Pete Carroll is a genius, not a genius. Pete Carroll is smart for saying that the goal right now is stability because that's exactly what they've needed because they've been unstable for so long, making boneheaded moves. I don't know. And they're just like the Raiders fans are just like Bears fans. They have such a passionate and loyal fan base, and the organization just takes advantage of them and their loyalty because they know they'll always be there no matter how bad the team sucks. So I think Pete stabilized, and that's why I think Pete got the job because he's coming in to just make sure that the team gets the fundamentals right. He's there to coach guys up. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention that they need to tear things down a little bit more before they build it up. And I don't think Max Crosby is a good player. He's the first one that comes to mind, Andrew, because I think he's the only player that could bring back first round pick for them to build with. and he's older. So I think that it would be a good idea to move on from him and just start building up the team now, so Pete can actually have a chance to build the roster the way he wants to build.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a tough decision. Moving on from Crosby, but because Crosby's been so damn good.
Yeah,
But I think you're right. Like that he's probably one of the few pieces, if not the only piece on that roster that's going to bring you a haul of draft capital to get rid of. So that's definitely something I think just overall it's a good, not great hire. I think a solid
yeah.
hire. There's definitely, I think, worse hires in the cycle, and I think there's better hires than Pete Carroll. I'm rooting for him. I thought some of the hires that he made are interesting, just because when you talk about that plan of maybe having a guy following your footsteps, his offensive coordinator hire is Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly coming
Mm,
over from UCLA, Ohio State's offensive coordinator. He's going to bring some offensive things to this, but I don't necessarily view him as the next guy as the head coach of this team either.
not a good people person.
Yeah, so Chip Kelly comes in as the offensive coordinator, and then there's some interesting. Brennan Carroll comes in as the offensive line coach. So he brings in his son. He spent some time with the Seahawks and spent some time in college football as the University of Washington's offensive coordinator. He
Don't
brings in,
Andrew, don't act like you don't know what the plan is. You know what the plan is. Same
yeah, he
plan
wants,
Belichick has with his son in North Carolina. When
yeah.
he
Well, it's going to
steps
be
down,
interesting.
that's who he wants to step up.
Well, it's going to get even more interesting because another hire is Nate Carroll, his other son. So he brings in his second son as well,
Oh,
as the offensive assistant quarterback coach. He spent some time with the Seahawks as well. Most recently was coaching with the Carolina Panthers. So you get Pete Carroll, Brennan Carroll, and Nate Carroll, the Carroll family, all here coaching with Chip Kelly. Joe Woods comes in as the defensive pass game coordinator. He spent some time with the Cleveland Browns and the New Orleans Saints. And then Rob Leonard comes in as the run game coordinator. It's kind of a holdover from his previous regime there in Las Vegas. So this was kind of under the Antonio Pierce coaching staff.
that's
Yeah,
so
it's
cringe. That staff is so cringe.
it's an interesting staff.
It's
I
cringy.
think maybe one of the least impressive staffs outside of probably Liam Cohen's.
Nepotism, a guy with a bad reputation for dealing with players. Yeah, man, it's that yeah, interesting is an interesting word to use. I think cringy is appropriate.
So let me ask you one question to close
Yeah,
up the Raiders, because I've seen some people float the idea out there. Pete Carroll has never really, outside of like Jimmy Graham, had a super productive tight end. Does a Pete Carroll hire worry you for Brock Bowers?
I think Brock Bowers is so generational that Pete Carroll won't. Okay, so two things with Brock Bowers. So when Brock Bowers first got drafted, and we had no clue he was going to be what he is, right? But when he first got drafted, I remember them saying that the idea was to use him and Michael Mayer, have Michael Mayer be your prototypical tight end, but occasionally line Brock Bowers up as a wide receiver. And I think that's the only saving grace for Brock Bowers is that the guy's just so talented that he could line up anywhere. He can line up in the slide. He can line up on the outside. He can do anything and be used. So I don't think Pete has ever had a tight end like that. So I do think that he'll be able to be productive. But if he goes out to get Russ to be the quarterback, I don't know, because Russell has never really supported a top end tight end before. So
Yeah,
both of those guys are like that.
yeah, I kind of had that thought floated to me from some people, and I kind of am under the same conclusion as you, where I'm not really worried. It's not really anything that crossed my mind. Like Pete Carroll getting hired did not make me think, oh shit, there goes my Brock Bowers shares. Like that didn't make me think that at all. So I'm not really worried about it. I think Bowers is going to be more than fine. And it shouldn't worry you if people are worried. But I know that was floated out there, so I just wanted to address that really quickly. Let's go to the last head coaching hire. This happened just recently. We were waiting till after the Super Bowl. We pushed this show back 1 week because we were waiting for this team to make a head
Yeah.
coaching hire. It is Kellen Moore of the New Orleans Saints. He ends up getting the job after the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl. He was the offensive coordinator for them last year, obviously helped them win that Super Bowl. Sirianni made a little bit of a case during the trophy presentation where he said, Kellen, let's just run it back, man. Let's just run it back one more time. Kellen said, hell no. I am going to take that head coaching job. Obviously, this is a player before that served as the offensive coordinator for the Chargers. He served as the offensive coordinator for the Cowboys. He played and retired as the Cowboys, or from the Cowboys Cowboys before becoming their quarterback coach. He spent a lot of time in the NFL, and if you guys have been around the NFL for a while, this is a player or a coach, a former player, whose name has been floated around in coaching cycles for a few years now. And it just finally happened, man. He finally got that head coaching job. I watched the press conference here. Still not a ton of information because this is super fresh as a hire, but he talked a lot about building a team vision. He emphasized building smart, fast, and a physical football team, which is kind of getting to what we talked about as you just throw those buzzwords out there. But he did mention too, he got a little bit more into detail. He said he really wants to focus on an offense that uses a lot of pre-snap motions. He wants to focus on shifts, playing with tempo, doing some of that stuff. Keep in mind, folks, this is a sharp offensive-minded guy. Like he knows his stuff. He's had some really good offenses in the NFL. So I did get those buzzwords out of him, but he also had some actual stuff, I think, of substance to follow that up with. He had expressed an appreciation for New Orleans. He said he's super excited about the opportunity. He wants to embrace the culture there in New Orleans. Emphasized particularly he wants to embrace the food, which I thought was interesting to bring that up. But he said he understands the importance of the Saints and how important the Saints are to the city of New Orleans, and he wants to kind of bring that excitement back to the city because he didn't feel like there's been some excitement for that Saints team for the last couple of years since basically Sean Payton left and Drew Brees retired. He was very non-committal to Derek Carr, was very vague when he was asked about the quarterback situation, said that everything is subject to review or change at this moment in time. That's what he said. So everything is up for review or change. To me, that is the nice way of saying we're probably going to be looking to get rid of him. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens. That's why I threw Derek Carr's name out there for the Jets. Maybe if they want to make a trade, he might be available. Leadership style is another thing that he talked on.
Horrible idea.
Yeah, he indicated that his leadership style is going to be different from the people before him. He says he wants to focus on innovation and innovative play calling and adapting his offense to the strengths of his players rather than making his players fit his offense. So he kind of, it felt like a subtle jab at Dennis Allen and some of these other guys before him, but he said he wants to really focus on tailoring his offense to the players in it. And then he said he wants to focus on a little bit of a rebuild. Everything that he was saying kind of leaned in that direction. Felt like he understands that this roster is going to get blown up and they're going to rebuild this from the bottom. And he kind of is going to be the guy calling some of the shots in this. He wants to reduce, he spoke a lot about how he wants the team to reduce salary cap and reduce some of the hits that they have on the roster. And he wants to focus on resourcing some of those resources out into different areas that need improvement. So it sounds a lot to me that maybe the conversations that they were having was, hey, we want you to come in and be the new guy. We need you to build this offense from the ground up as a new age offense, you know, kind of get us out of that old stale type of shit that we had with Dennis Allen. And we want to have a lot of motion and a lot of pre-snap adjustments and things like that. And we're going to just strip this thing down to the studs and rebuild. And sounds like he probably has some job security too, if he's already talking about rebuilds, because it seems like management is already focusing on rebuild as well. So that's kind of what it sounds like for the Saints, at least the takeaways from the press conference. When it came down to notable hires, really there's nothing yet as of this moment. Obviously, Kellen is going to be calling plays. At least that's the assumption right now, is Kellen Moore is going to be calling plays. So the offensive coordinator isn't going to be a huge hire. But Keith Williams was retained from the previous coaching staff as the wide receiver coach. So he's going to stay there as the wide receiver coach. And Brendan Nugent is going to be there as the offensive line coach. He was brought back after working with Kellen Moore in Los Angeles during his time with the Chargers. So those are really the two hires. When it comes down to fantasy football options, to me, this is a good fantasy hire for the Saints. I think who is going to be there, I have no fucking clue. I have no idea. I would be nervous just based on Kellen Moore's statements. I'd be nervous that Alvin Kamara is probably on the chopping block with the contract that he currently has and the cap hit that he currently has and his age. I think he's probably on the chopping block. I think pretty much
will be good on the Cowboys.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of guys that are going to be interesting. Obviously, Derek Carr is on the chopping block potentially after those comments. Saints. Who's going to be the starting quarterback this year? I don't know. Could it potentially be Spencer Rattler again? Maybe. I hope not. But maybe it is. Ultimately, though, I think this helps two people and two people primarily. Kellen Moore, very pass friendly, plays fast, a lot of pre-snap motions. This should be good for Chris Olave. This should be good for Rashid Shaheed. Both of those players I expect to be building blocks in this receiver room moving forward. And both of those players I think are going to see increases moving forward. In fact, Chris Olave, probably one of my favorite buys at the moment because people are just out on him. Obviously with the concussions and with some of the disappointing play over the last couple of years, I think people are pretty upset with Chris Olave, and I'm buying if I can get him for wide receiver 2 prices.
I have the exact opposite opinion as you, sir.
Really?
I think this whole offense is cooked, dude. I think they're going to lean tough into tanking and rebuilding. I think they're going to, and it goes along with the script too. I think that if it's any team that will want Arch Manning, it's the team that had Arch Manning. I mean, it will be perfect. And them tearing it down to the studs. Here's the thing: they got to get back control of their finances. They haven't been in control of their finances for years. I think they're going to get rid of Derek Carr. I think they're going to get rid of Alvin Kamara. I think they're going to get rid of every high salary player they have. And unfortunately, if that means that they have to have Spencer Rattler rolling out there every week, I think that's terrible for Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. I think Kellen Moore as a coach for those players is good. But if they get rid of Derek Carr and Spencer Rattler has to be the coach, it doesn't matter how good Kellen Moore is because those players might be better off a year from now, but I don't think it'll help them this upcoming season. I think they're going to tear that whole thing down. I think they're going to get rid of those high salaries. And yeah, man, some guys are going to have to get put on ice for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I pulled up their numbers from Over the Cap right now. So if you guys ever want to look up cap numbers at home, Over the Cap's Spotrac, just short for sports contracts. Those are two of the websites that I look at. But Over the Cap right now, I'm looking at some cap numbers for the Saints. I mean, comments leaning towards a rebuild and maybe just underperforming players. There's a lot of guys here, man. I'll just list the guys making $10 million or more in 2025. Those players are going to be Alvin Kamara. I think potentially a cap casualty. You could save $15 million by moving on from him this offseason. Tyrann Mathieu. You can save, has a cap number of $11 million. Demario Davis, his old ass, cap number $12.5 million. Taysom Hill has a $17 million, almost $18 million cap hit. Probably good as gone. Cam Jordan, obviously still a good player, but an older player, $20 million cap hit this year. If you're leaning towards a rebuild, he probably is available for trade as well. Derek Carr, $51.5 million cap hit. He is damn near, I think, out the door just with that contract. So basically what we've seen from the Saints over the last couple of years, Taysom Hill, Alvin Kamara, Derek Carr, Demario Douglas, Tyrann Mathieu, like these staple Saints players, I think they're all, their world's about to change, a lot of these guys. So
it's time for the Saints to go back to being the Aints.
Yeah, for a year or two, probably, right?
Yeah.
Even guys like Jamal Williams and stuff like that, like cut them, let Kendre Miller go, or draft another guy and just go.
Who are you keeping? If that scenario, who are you keeping from this team besides Olave and Shaheed?
Just offensively,
you could go either way, because it doesn't sound like there's going to be a lot of guys that are going to be holdovers.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say for me, like offensively, like I'm still keeping Eric McCoy, Ryan Ramczyk, Cesar Ruiz. Like I'm keeping these guys because these are young, not young, but like cornerstone building blocks around your offensive line. I'm keeping these guys. Chase Young, if I can keep him, I'm trying to keep him. Chris Olave, Kalen Saunders, Trevor Penning, Rashid Shaheed, Talise Fuaga. I'm trying to keep these guys. Indifferent on Kendre Miller. Everybody else, like you're good as gone in my opinion. Like if somebody wants you, take them. If not, I don't care. You might get cut, and I might just replace your ass with somebody new. But yeah, if I had Madden franchise ability right here, I mean, I'm stripping this shit down to like 15 players and just rebuilding from the top.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
exactly.
But that's not realistic for an NFL franchise. They're obviously not going to strip down that far, but I think over the next couple of years we could see a lot of transitions. So overall, I didn't even say Kool-Aid McKinstry. I think we probably keep him too because he's
Oh yeah, yeah.
a young guy. But yeah, man, that's it. That's the coaching hires. We talked through all of them: Ben Johnson, vrabel, Liam Coen, Aaron Glenn, Brian Schottenheimer, Pete Carroll, and Kellen Moore. I just want to quickly run through this real fast before we get to the end here. War. Let's give a ranking. Your number one hire to your number 7, and I'll do my number 1 to your number 7. So let's take it from best to worst.
Obviously, number 1 is Ben Johnson. Mike vrabel. Who would I have third? So that's 2 there. I gotta say no, Kellen Moore. Even though they're going to tear down, my third hire is Kellen Moore. My fourth hire would be Liam Coen, Pete Carroll, then Aaron Glenn, and Brian Schottenheimer. Yeah.
I'm going to go number 1, Ben Johnson. Number 2, I'm going to go Mike vrabel. Number 3, I'm going Liam Coen. 4, I'm going to go Kellen Moore. 5, I will go Pete Carroll. 6, Aaron Glenn. 7, Brian Schottenheimer. So
pretty much we just swapped Liam Coen and Kellen Moore.
Yeah, and I think if we were like, in fantasy, when you put people in a tier list, we'll probably put them in the same tier. I'm gonna put Coen and Kellen Moore in the same tier. So we'll see. But overall,
I think. Do you think Ben Johnson in his own tier?
Yeah,
and Mike vrabel's in the second tier by itself.
Yeah, it was. I think Ben Johnson for today's NFL with the offensive, side of the ball being so dominant and that being the way that the game's going, I think having a guy like Ben Johnson is more beneficial than having a guy like vrabel. Not to say vrabel's a bad coach, but hey, we just saw Coach of the Year, Kevin O'Connell. I'm going to keep throwing that out there, but Kevin O'Connell, who's a very innovative offensive play caller, that's what wins in today's NFL right now. So I like it.
Are there any coaches that you think should have gotten a job that didn't get a job in this cycle?
Yeah, I would say potentially. The only one that I think maybe wasn't deserving of a coaching hire is Brian Schottenheimer. And honestly, I do kind of believe, I know Dallas Cowboys fans are not going to want to hear this. I think Mike McCarthy is a better coach than Brian Schottenheimer. And so I think if you were going to fire him, you probably should have just kept Mike McCarthy, because I think Mike McCarthy probably deserves the job.
Honestly, I think they didn't want to fire Mike McCarthy. I think Jerry Jones got in a pissing contest with him about money, and then they both just walked away from the table. I think the plan was originally to keep Mike McCarthy, and now they thrust Brian Schottenheimer into this position because they didn't have a good plan, because they didn't get started with the coaching cycle, because they thought they were going to keep Mike McCarthy, so they got in late.
Yeah, I think the only other guys that probably would have had, I would say probably a chance, that they ended up saying that they didn't want to have head coaching jobs, but I would say Cliff Kingsbury probably should have had some interviews, but I think he made the right decision going back. And other than that, man, I feel like the head coaching hire this year was, outside of Ben Johnson, just some guys. It was a group of guys that may or may not work out. I think you could say that for every head coaching hire, but at the end of the day, I don't think that there was a ton of smash hires where I was like, damn, dude, that's a really good hire. I think Ben Johnson was probably the only one I felt like that.
Only one I'll add, Mike McCarthy was good. I agree with the two you said. I think Joe Brady could have had a chance. I think he hurt himself though in the playoffs. So
I also, before that playoff game though, he had said I'm coming back to coach Josh Allen again. So I don't know. I think we'll see what happens next year. I think if Cliff or Brady go out and have another year like that, those guys are going to be getting head coaching jobs next year, and maybe the cycle's a little bit better. I'd say some of the teams this year, the Raiders, the Saints, the Cowboys, not as desirable, and the Jets, not as desirable of destinations as most people really want them to be. I think the desirable destinations are Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears at quarterback. You get Drake May and the New England Patriots with that quarterback, and you get Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars with Brian Thomas Jr. in the wide receiver room. Who wouldn't love those jobs? I think those are good jobs to have, but outside of those, who cares? But yeah, man, that's it. We're long today on this coaching video. It is what it is. I know you got stuff to do. I got stuff to do. If you guys like this video, hit the like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you go join our free Discord. We do have a free Discord linked in the description, helping you guys with your Dynasty Fantasy Football teams 24/7, 365. And like I said, it's free to join, so there is no risk in doing that. Or you are making content. You're making a little bit of a shift in some of your content as well too. So explain that for the people if they want to follow you at home.
All right, if you want to follow me, or if you already follow me, just follow me at Crimson Mask Pro Wrestling. There you will see highlights and shows of all the main pro wrestling shows in the form of shorts. But if you want long, more exclusive content, follow us at our new channel called The Crimson Mask Show. There we'll have our podcast and we'll have exclusive content and more deep dives into the world of pro wrestling. Crimson Mask Pro Wrestling with an Attitude.
Damn straight. All right, folks, go follow him, go subscribe here, do all that good stuff. We'll see you next week. Dynasty trade review show. It feels like it's been too long, but it's only been like 2 weeks. Hit a little mini solo one this week, so go check that one out if you haven't. But all that considered, see you on next episode. Till then, peace out.